Good morning. I love this time of year. The colors are all changing. Just wish there was a way I could shorten winter. When I studied psychology, I had learned about the mystery of the split brain. I used to think our brain had two hemispheres, operated the opposite sides of the body. I did not know that they thought differently. But in various experiments, they determined that the two hemispheres of the brain think quite differently. The left brain is mathematics, language, science, logic, all analytical forms of thought. When they looked at the right brain, it was art, music, dance, fantasy, inspiration, and creativity, which were all associations of thought. And when I learned that, I realized that I had grown up in a left brain-oriented culture. Science, English, history, and mathematics were the subjects that I was taught in high school. But when I looked at the history of religion, I saw a right brain-oriented culture. Mythology, legends, symbolism, artwork, all adorn the ancient cultures. Modern science developed around the time of the Renaissance, and that's when the shift occurred between right brain to left brain. And it also shifted the focus. It went from spiritual issues to laws governing the material universe. In the 6th century AD, Christianity had suppressed science in favor of religious discipline. And the reason being is that the people who were investigating science were engaged in barbarism, immorality. They had to restore the rule of law. Ironically, the modern-day atheists are saying the same thing about religion today. They opposed religion because they look at all of the atrocities that were committed by religious history. They look at the holy wars and they said, that's what religion can do to you. We don't want any part of it. The Bible says that God created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't tell you anything about God, nor does it tell you how God created anything. It says nothing, about how God created anything. Literal acceptance of sacred scripture is what led to its downfall. You can't use the word God to fill in the blank. The scientist says, we don't know how the first cells were formed. And the religious advocate says, oh, I know, it was God. Doesn't tell you anything about how. Science wants to know how. Reverting to God doesn't tell you how. My Sunday school teachers didn't want me to question everything. But in reading the story of Adam and Eve, I knew that snakes don't talk. I knew that fruit doesn't endow you with knowledge when you eat it. So I knew that I was looking at a story that couldn't be taken literally. They say, did it ever happen? Well, the fact is, it happens every day. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is not something you would find in an orchard. All of its branches represent the warnings of society. And when you go against those warnings, you get into all kinds of trouble. I am a board member for Reliance Health. Reliance Health deals with mental health and addiction services. I watched it grow from a single man to over 140 employees, and from a small annual budget to over 12 million. The issues of mental health and addiction are growing, and a lot of it is because people don't have a spiritual foundation. They are easily led into sensual pleasures, and those sensual pleasures are getting people into a lot of trouble. Yes, they didn't want me to question anything because authority ruled. But throughout history, any authority which was not based on the truth led to disastrous results. So it has to be questioned, because that's the only way you can get to the bottom of it. Neither science nor religion are inherently good or evil. It all depends on what you do with the knowledge. What happened during the witch hunts was due to superstition and ignorance, which we mentioned earlier. They didn't know the cause of disease. They didn't know the cause of crop failures. And their answer to it was the only thing they understood is demons. They didn't know what demons were. Demons are disturbances in the mental field. But disturbances in the mental field are not governed by the laws of the material universe. So in that respect, when you're dealing with spirituality, science can't offer you any help there. Right and wrong in science is not based on moral issues. It's based on what works and what doesn't regarding the physical laws of the universe. They say that religion suppressed science. But the fact is, the ancient world could not go to the grocery store. It could not take out a pork chop and put it on the stove and turn a dial and cook it. They didn't have pharmacies. There was a problem at home, they couldn't call for an ambulance. They lived in a world in which daily activities took the whole day. Unless you were among the rich, you didn't have time for science. And those that did have time for science, well, the printing press wasn't developed until the 16th century AD. And that is where a lot of our information got disseminated through the congregation. Libraries were few and far between. People didn't have books at home. They had to go to local community establishments in order to hear the knowledge of the day. And even when the printing press first came out, it was more used to produce public notices. The microscope was figured in 1590. Until the microscope was discovered, they had no knowledge of microbes. So what was causing disease, they didn't know. The telescope came out in 1608. It was only then that they saw that moons were orbiting Jupiter and started questioning the heavens and what runs them. I watched a program by Carl Sagan, and he had talked about once they used to think that the sun revolved around the earth. He says now they know that the earth orbits the sun. But he said, what would it look like if the sun actually did revolve around the earth? So as far as the sun is concerned, wouldn't look any different. So the idea of changing from an earth-centered universe to a sun-centered universe was a slow process because they needed the evidence to be able to prove it. How much do we need religion today? Well, I looked at the moon program, and I noticed that their programs The Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo were all based on mythological figures. Now, why did they choose mythological characters to represent their programs? Because they knew that they needed more than science to be able to figure out what to do. They needed the creative side of the mind. So by using mythological figures, they were taking their people to be able to shift them and recognize, yeah, you're going to need science to figure out how to put a rocket on the moon, but you're also going to need the creative side of the mind to figure out, okay, after you get the first step done, what's next? So they use mythological figures to back up the moon program for the purpose of being able to use both sides of the brain. The problems that I'm seeing in today is the idea that we are a cosmic accident and that this is all there is to life. The deeper that science goes into its studies, the more it realizes that it's far more complicated than what they realize. They know that life evolved on Earth, but they don't know how. And in order to avoid any religious ideas, they have to conjure up all kinds of scientific ideas to account for it, because they know that the possibility of life forming on its own without a guiding force is so remote, it requires all of these exotic theories. And the thing that science is determining is that none of these theories can be proved, which means now that their theories are starting to have to be taken on faith. And it's an issue that science is finding troubling, because in order to reject religion, they have to adopt the very things that religion used in order to present itself. We know that matter and energy are conserved. You and I are made of the very same atoms that the dinosaurs were made out of. The energy hasn't changed. It's just altered in form. The Akashic Records is something that Edgar Cayce had dwelt into, and he discovered that there is a record. It's called the Book of, he related it to the Book of Life. There is a record of everything that has ever happened on planet Earth. All the people that ever lived. All the things they ever did. The reason why they did it. He found it there. The idea that when you die, you just disappear. It's not true when it comes to the spiritual side of life. As we get into what is known as quantum mechanics, it's a deep-rooted science theory. It's very exotic. And the thing is, it's the same throughout the cosmos. The same rules that we are adopting here on planet Earth pertain to the sun, pertain to the galaxies, pertain to the other planets, pertain to the nebulas that are out there. The same rules govern the entire universe. Where did these rules come from? Science can tell you what they are, and that's as far as they can go. They can't tell you how the rules came to exist in the first place. So when I look at the world and I see problems, some people are yielding to their anxieties. But I say, be the solution. My tenant came up to me the other day, and he was talking about what was going on in Israel, and he said, I don't know how to deal with this. And I says, do you remember the serenity prayer? And he says, yeah. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I says, you got to think about that. What you do here is not going to change what happens overseas. But what you do here will make a difference in the lives that you associate with every day. So deal with today. Deal with the people that you come in contact with today. Be the solution. Create something. Build something. Develop a new skill or talent. Find a new recipe. Do something to make the world better. Because everything that we have that makes our life good comes from the past, either by natural processes or by man-made processes. We become the future by helping to shape it. And what the world becomes is going to be a direct result of how we chose to live our lives now. If life returns, and I believe it does, I want to make sure that the world that I come back to isn't falling apart. So yeah, I'm going to die within the next 50 years, but I don't believe that that's the end of me. So I'm going to spend my life doing what I can so that the world is better, so that when I do return, I come back to a better world. The song that we sang, A Beautiful Isle of Somewhere, it's really what religion and science was all about to begin with. How do we find that better world? And we find it by helping to build it.